The shelling had stopped an hour ago, but the ground still trembled beneath the wounded as stretcher teams stumbled across the ruins of the forward clearing station at Vimy Ridge. Snow drifted sideways across the shattered field hospital, a canvas tent ripped open by shrapnel, its contents scattered across the mud like spilled organs. Lieutenant Arthur Hale, a young Royal Engineers officer, stared at the scene with a frozen kind of disbelief. He had expected chaos. He had not expected silence. The men who survived weren't screaming. They were motionless, under blankets, stiff with ice. They had been alive yesterday. Exposure finished what artillery had started. That night, Hale watched a major scribble his name across yet another casualty ledger, and simply whisper, "We are losing more men to cold than to the Germans." The queue. Next morning, a strange order arrived from the rear echelon. Report to Forward Experimental Station. Equipment test. Priority. No explanation. No blueprints. Just coordinates. When Hale arrived at the coordinates, he didn't find a bridge project, not a trench fortification, not an observation post. He found a shape, a long curved silhouette rising out of the mud, like the skeleton of a buried whale, a half-cylinder of metal, gleaming under snowfall. Men were alive inside it, warm, dry, breathing, while the dead outside froze in canvas. And standing beside it was a broad-shouldered officer with an unreadable face and a Canadian accent. "You're late," the man said. "Name's Nissen. This hut isn't what you think, and it isn't here officially. Not yet." Through the doorway, Hale saw something he didn't understand. Not wounded soldiers. Sealed crates. Locked. Unmarked. Under guard. This wasn't just shelter. It was hiding something. Lieutenant Hale expected wounded officers or classified equipment. He did not expect guards, unmarked guards, men with no unit patch, no regimental insignia, no service numbers on their tunics. They let him pass only after Nissen himself nodded. Inside, the warmth hit him first. Thick, almost unnatural compared to the frozen trench line. The corrugated walls seemed to breathe with condensation, like the hut itself had lungs. A small stove burned at the center, but someone had boxed it in with sandbags, overkill for just heating. Then Hale noticed it. A second, smaller room had been constructed inside the hut, hidden behind prefabricated panels. A door with a bolt on the outside. A cell. Nissen lowered his voice. "What you see here does not exist to the War Office yet. The shelter is the excuse. The thing inside is the reason." Hale felt the air shift. Not fear, not surprise, implication. "Is it a deserter?" he asked. "A German defector?" Nissen didn't answer. His jaw tightened. "Not a defector," he finally said. "Someone we cannot afford the Germans, or even our own high command, to discover." Hale stared at him. "You're hiding a prisoner?" Nissen's eyes flicked toward the sealed room. "Not a prisoner. A survivor." A cold heaviness settled over Hale. The shelling that morning had killed dozens, frozen dozens more, and yet this single unknown survivor was the one guarded like gold. "Who is inside?" Hale asked. Nissen did not blink. "The reason this war can never be fought the old way again." Lightning cracked somewhere outside. Snow rattled the metal roof like bones in a drum. And for a moment, Hale wasn't sure if the structure was protecting the person, or if the hut existed to keep the rest of the world safe from them. The guard unbolted the inner door and stepped aside. Hale expected a broken figure, a prisoner in rags, wounded, defeated. Instead, he saw a woman sitting upright on a narrow cot, her posture too controlled, too alert for a captive. She didn't flinch at the cold air rushing in. She just studied him the way an officer studies a map. She wore no uniform, just a gray greatcoat, bloodstains carefully scrubbed from the sleeves. Her wrists were not chained, because she was not being kept in. She was being kept from disappearing. Hale looked to Nissen. "Who is she?" Her voice answered before he could. "The wrong question, Lieutenant, is what am I to your commanders? The right question is why they would rather bury me than use me." Her English was flawless, but wrong, in a way Hale couldn't place. Vowels trained, consonants sharpened. European, but not French, not Belgian, not German. Nissen finally spoke. She was operating behind the German lines longer than any agent on record. Intelligence call signs don't use names. Hers was Wren. She reached British lines 3 days ago, carrying information that could crack open the spring offensive before it begins. Hale frowned. Then why isn't she in London? Nissen's answer was almost a whisper. Because someone in London is already compromised. If she reports to the wrong man first, the entire network dies. Hale turned back to the woman. "You're being hidden? Inside a hut?" She gave a thin, bitter smile. "No, Lieutenant. I am the reason this hut exists. The shelter is the story they can explain. I am the one they cannot." And suddenly the design made sense. Why, headquarters rushed Nissen's experimental structure to a forward line. Why there were no official records. Why unmarked soldiers guarded it, like a vault. This was not a prototype. This was a decoy safehouse disguised as battlefield innovation. And if Wren's story was true, the War Office wasn't racing the Germans. They were racing a traitor inside their own chain of command. Snow hammered the curved roof, as if the sky itself wanted inside. Hale could feel the weight of what wasn't being said. The kind of silence that only exists when truth is dangerous enough to change the war. He stepped closer to Nissen. "You didn't bring this hut to the front to test it," Hale said quietly. Nissen didn't deny it. "No," he murmured. "I brought it, so no one would question why a sealed structure with guards appeared overnight near a casualty station." Hale suddenly saw it clearly. The speed of assembly, the excuse of experimental sheltering, the secrecy of the delivery, the lack of official paperwork. The hut wasn't the disguise for her. She was the reason the hut had to be invented. Nissen lowered his voice further. "The design works. It saves lives. But it exists because the War Office needed something ordinary to camouflage something extraordinary." "The spy network?" Hale asked. Nissen shook his head slowly. "No. One man. A single traitor with authority high enough to erase anyone who exposed him. She is the only witness. If she dies before delivering what she knows, he stays invisible. And the spring offensive becomes a British massacre." Hale looked at Wren again, not like a prisoner, but like a keystone, a living secret the Empire couldn't lose, and couldn't safely acknowledge. "Who is the traitor?" Hale asked. Wren's answer was soft, controlled. "A man who will know I survived the moment this structure appears in records. That is why there can be no records. Not yet." Then she delivered the line that changed everything. "Lieutenant, the huts are not spreading across the front because they're finished. They're spreading because I need time to reach London. And the only way to hide me is to hide me in plain sight. Multiplied 10,000 times." Hale felt it in his spine. If the War Office made the huts standard issue, then one hut guarded by armed men disappears into the thousands. The innovation wasn't architecture, it was misdirection. The British Army wasn't racing winter. They were racing treason. That night, orders arrived to move Wren to a secondary position closer to the rail junction. On paper, it was routine relocation. Move her deeper behind British lines, where extraction to London would be easier. But Hale noticed something wrong before the convoy even formed. One of the guards, a tall, quiet corporal who had barely spoken since Hale's arrival, had changed armbands. Royal Engineers yesterday. Army Service Corps today. No one swaps corps mid-operation. Hale stepped closer. "Where is your original insignia?" he asked. The corporal didn't answer. Nissen turned. He knew that look. The air inside the hut thickened. Wren watched silently, her face unreadable. Then Hale saw the final detail. The corporal's rifle bolt. Oiled, polished, unused. A man guarding. A high-value asset in artillery country should have carbon stains on his weapon. He didn't. This man wasn't assigned to fight. He was assigned to finish someone. Hale's hand moved before thought. He reached for the sidearm at his coat, but the corporal was faster, shoving him back against the curved steel wall with enough force to rattle the bolts. The hut door slammed shut behind them. The corporal's voice dropped to a whisper. Too calm for a soldier. Mission priority is containment. The witness doesn't leave the front. Nissen lunged, trying to grab the rifle barrel. The shot cracked inside the hut like thunder. The round punched through the corrugated sheet and vanished into the snow outside. The guards outside ran, but the assassin wasn't aiming for them. He turned the weapon toward Wren. "Command will bury you and the man who built your shelter beside you." But Wren didn't flinch. She looked at him, studied him, the same way she had scanned Hale. "You're not here to kill me," she said softly. "You're here to erase the idea of me." And then Hale understood. They didn't just want her dead. They wanted proof she ever existed to vanish with her. If the assassin succeeded, history would record a failed hut experiment, a destroyed prototype, a meaningless engineering footnote lost in paperwork. And the spy network, the one she could expose, would never be known. But the assassin made one mistake. He thought Hale was an engineer. Hale was Royal Engineers, yes, but before that, he had been infantry. The corporal rechambered around. Hale hit him full force from the blind side, slamming him against the stove shield before he could fire. The rifle clattered across the floor. Nissen crushed the bolt under his heel. Outside, alarms rose. Inside, the truth changed shape. This wasn't just a safe house anymore. This hut had just been attacked. Not by Germans, but by someone who already belonged to British command. Wren looked at Hale. Calm, but no longer distant. "Now you understand, Lieutenant. There is no extraction plan. Until the traitor is named, every hut is a coffin waiting to close around me." And Hale realized the only thing standing between her life and disappearance was not the hut. It was whether he chose to keep the secret moving. The assassin was dragged out by the remaining guards, and the door sealed again. Hale was still breathing hard when he turned to Nissen. "You knew this was coming," Hale said quietly. Nissen didn't deny it. He just looked tired. The tired of a man who'd been playing two different wars at once. Wren studied his expression. "You're not afraid they'll kill me," she said. "You're afraid they'll kill the program before you finish it." For the first time, Nissen's mask cracked. "We are not building huts," he said. "We are building an illusion. If command believes these shelters are temporary logistics infrastructure, they'll never question the handful that contain intelligence assets. The architecture is camouflage. The speed is camouflage. You are camouflage. Hale stared. You're saying the entire rollout, the mass production, the War Office orders. Nissen nodded. All of it. The huts are a decoy-sized miracle. Tens of thousands of identical shells moving across the map. Inside any one of them, we can hide a courier, a spy, a wireless operator, a code breaker, and no German aerial scout or British. Traitor can tell which hut is a barracks and which hut is war-changing intelligence. Wren's voice dropped to a cold whisper. You didn't save me! You weaponized me! Nissen did not look ashamed. I made you invisible. And invisibility is the only armor espionage ever gets. Hale felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. This was never humanitarian innovation. This was counterintelligence by architecture. Not a hut, a ghost system. A moving fog of identical buildings in which no single secret could ever be isolated. And then Wren delivered the final truth. That means, if I die, the huts stay. But if I live, they have to multiply. Nissen looked Hale dead in the eye. That's why you were brought here, Lieutenant. Not to assemble steel, to assemble a myth. You're not just helping build shelter, you are helping build deniability. In that moment, Hale understood the price. The Nissen hut wasn't created to house soldiers. It was created to hide truths the Army could never admit existed. And history would remember it as engineering, because the conspiracy was designed so that history never discovered the real story. That night, while the guards prepped for Ament, Hale confronted Wren privately. You're not the asset, he told her quietly. You're the proof of concept. Once this works, they won't need consent. They won't even need guilt. Anyone can be disappeared, as long as they put a hut around them. Wren didn't argue. Her voice was thin but steady. That's why I can't reach London, Lieutenant. If I reach London, I become precedent. If I die here, I become a warning. Then why are you cooperating with him? She looked up, a tired, razor-sharp stare of someone who had outlived fear. Because I'd rather be a myth they fail to kill than a secret they succeed in burying. Outside, hammers struck steel. Another hut rising, another mask added to the network. The Nissen design would sweep the front. Commanders would cheer. Its speed, engineers would praise its simplicity. Soldiers would bless its warmth. None of them would ever know that the first hut wasn't a shelter at all. It was a prototype for a system that could make a human being vanish without ever being recorded as missing. Decades later, historians would say the Nissen hut revolutionized field engineering. They would never say it revolutionized erasure, because the design didn't just keep men alive. It showed how easily a government could hide one. Years passed. The war ended. Files were closed. Cities rebuilt. Uniforms folded into history. Vateringse Nissen hut became a symbol of practicality. A footnote in engineering textbooks. A simple story taught to school children about military innovation and British ingenuity. But Lieutenant Hale never forgot the night he realized the truth. Those huts weren't designed to shelter men. They were designed to shelter secrets. In 1923, on a fog-drowned morning outside London, Hale spotted one of the old intelligence officers from the hut's guard detail. The man didn't wear insignia now either. Retirement didn't restore an identity he was never supposed to have. You served at Vimy, Hale said quietly. The old guard stiffened. No record of me there, sir. Hale paused. Then what happened to her? The old guard didn't ask who. He already knew exactly which ghost Hale meant. He took a long breath. If she'd died, they'd have given her a name. If she lived, she'd never be allowed one. Hale felt it like a door silently closing. You're saying she survived. The man gave the smallest nod. Or she disappeared properly. In this line of work, sir, that's the same thing. He tipped his cap and walked on, swallowed by London fog, as if he had stepped back into the hut itself. Months later, Hale visited an abandoned army depot scheduled for demolition. The last remaining Nissen huts stood there like rib cages of a giant animal long extinct. One hut was welded shut from the inside. No records, no unit number, no requisition mark. He ran his hand across the iron curve, cold, rough history under his fingertips. Somewhere between the steel and the silence, he finally understood. Monuments do not always honor the people who lived. Sometimes they protect the memory of the ones who were never allowed to exist. The war had moved forward. The world moved forward. But deep beneath every shelter innovation plaque, there was a hidden truth. The first Nissen hut didn't save a battalion. It saved a secret and buried a witness inside a legend built to erase her.